One of the worst things that can happen is when a curable cancer case falls through the cracks, causing needless pain, suffering, expense, and even premature death. Yet it happens all the time in the U.S. healthcare system. For example, when incidental findings discovered during an examination for some other reason are not followed up due to labor shortages or confusion about who's responsible or confusion about what the findings mean. Hi, everyone. I'm David Williams, president of strategy consulting firm Health Business Group and host of the HealthBiz podcast, a weekly show where I interview top healthcare leaders about their lives and careers. My guest today is Chris Cashwell, CEO and founder of Azra AI, whose technology interprets unstructured data to identify patients who need treatment and follow-up care. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Good. Well, I hope I told your story right. Otherwise, we'll spend the rest of the episode correcting it, but we'll assume we're okay for now. I'm very excited to have this conversation. Maybe before we get into what you're doing now with Azra AI, let's talk about your background, your upbringing. What was your childhood like? Any influences that have stuck with you through the years?
Sure, absolutely. I do think that my childhood had a lot of influence on who I am today. I came from a home that was unique, especially at the time of my upbringing, where my dad was a disabled veteran from Vietnam. He was partially paralyzed. He came back from Vietnam, and he and my mom started a new family. And it was interesting in the concept that he was a stay-at-home dad. And so because he was disabled, he still lived a very vibrant life through my childhood. But I had a stay-at-home dad and a mom that worked outside the home. And so as a boy, I was an only child, and the ability to have that father-son bond was priceless and very unique, obviously, in that time frame. And then on the flip side, to be able to see my mom go out and be more of a the typical quote breadwinner and the 9 to 5 worker in the household was very much something that was imprinted on me as far as respect and how moms have to handle and juggle so much, and that her love and affection and my dad's was not predicated on just the time with someone. And so those roles being reversed, I think, really stuck with me and gave me a lot of foundational empathy and thoughts for how people's lives may be as they grow up.
No, thanks. Well, thank you for sharing that. That does sound very, very interesting and quite different from the norm. What did you do for education? What did you study?
Yeah, I studied finance and economics in college. I went to Lipscomb University in Nashville, Tennessee, and I initially wanted to go into something related to finance and commercial lending, financial banking, and those types of things. And so it was a great time for me. I really enjoyed that, and I quickly learned through doing internships in high school and college that I love talking to business owners. How were they successful? What did they do? And it really taught me as I went through that educational process of that you can't judge a book by its cover, and you have to respect everyone, respect their work ethic, respect how they conduct themselves, because the stereotypes of who you think walks into a bank or who asks for a loan of $5 million is not necessarily who you would project it to be. And so it was a really great process as I did that, and really knew that's what I wanted to do right out of school, to be able to be involved in that community of entrepreneurs and business owners and folks that were leaders in the community.
Now, it looks from your LinkedIn that you spent a fair amount of time at GE and some of their management programs there. What was that like back in the day before GE? Whatever has happened to it in most recent years.
That's right. I was fortunate to be there kind of to roaring Jack Welch days, and so it was an amazing ride. I think I was there for over 12 years, and at the time we were the well-oiled machine, the world's capitalistic example of how to be successful. And the number one thing, or a couple of the things that were so successful, were we were highly trained, meaning we were exposed to the best and brightest minds in the business world on a regular basis about how to do things better, how to communicate, how to negotiate. Anything you can imagine was at our fingertips to be able to access. And then two was even though we were a behemoth at that time, I think the largest company in the world from a valuation standpoint, way before the Amazons and
Yeah.
the Teslas of the day, and the being exposed to the different leaders of all these different divisions. Jack was famous for moving people around
Hmm.
from whether you're in aircraft or healthcare or wherever it may be. And so you were exposed to people that had a leadership style and a way of running their business that transcended what the particular vertical was. And so the training and the exposure to that was amazing. And then I think the ability to have that entrepreneurial spirit of what we said back in the day, which was to take big swings, not be afraid of failure, and to trust your process and methodology and the team, and that you won't be successful every time. But if you take that big swing and one of those three swings works, then you've done something, magical, and you've really created value.
That's pretty good. I mean, you can be a Hall of Famer hitting 300, right? That's
Yeah,
the idea there.
that's
So
right.
now, then it looks like you did spend some time at WebMedics, which I think was acquired by Nuance, and then you were at Nuance for a while. What was that experience like? It was a much smaller company, but had some success there.
Yes, that's really kind of started down the trail of where I am today. I was exposed to the idea of, at the time, we didn't call it AI, we called it machine learning or natural language
Yeah.
processing. And I had a wonderful CEO named Sean Carroll at the time that was a visionary and knew that clinical documentation was worth far more than the piece of paper it was printed out on. And so he started this idea and really helped me evolve the company and the market into what can we extract out of all these clinical documents that helps the provider, the payer, the patient all do their jobs better and have better outcomes. And so uh, that was the really the start of my love of AI and the impact it can have on the providers and the patients. We sold that company to Nuance, and I worked around some of the smartest people I've ever been fortunate to work with in the world of the emerging technology of taking speech recognition and then transferring that into this clinical documentation outflow that used all this valuable information for things from helping the physician not only document but diagnose, all the way through to helping people code and be able to bill more effectively and efficiently. So that was a wonderful time. A lot of smart people, and really where I started my love for AI and natural language processing and the whole machine learning genre.
Yeah, Nuance is an interesting place. I think since acquired by Microsoft, if I'm correct there.
Right.
But they had done
Right.
some things both on the real high end of the speech recognition, natural language processing, and taking some very labor intensive approaches like in medical transcription, and making it much more automated and using Dragon, and they bought up a bunch of little
Mm-hmm.
companies that were doing just the old fashioned transcription,
Right.
right, and then used it to make that much more highly automated and even fully automated. And then the idea of taking these documents, not just to be billed and to show you what had been done, but to get all these other uses out of them was also something that they
Right.
advanced as well. So from there, it sounds like Lincor was another stop along the
Mm-hmm.
journey. Was Lincor?
Lincor is a patient engagement company. You think about the interaction between nurses and patients, and the easiest analogy is to think about we're still in the archaic world of having that whiteboard in a patient's room, that there's some scribble down in the corner that has
Yeah.
a extension number and maybe "Hello, my name is Nancy" on it. And so there's an opportunity there either for the caregiver, the loved one, or the patient to be able to have a much more real time and interactive view of their stay, of their care, and of their requirements to have the best outcomes. And so, Lincor was a patient engagement company that allowed that technology to be delivered to everyone's room for nurses to be able to input information across a broad spectrum of patients and to really start to help automate the process and move away from this idea of whiteboards on the corner of the patient's room.
Nice. The whiteboard's good. Yeah, the thing is, you got to make sure that it's the most up to date stuff because it could be yesterday's nurse if you're not careful, and then somebody might write there with a Sharpie and you
Exactly.
can't erase it at all. So it sounds like
Exactly.
it sounds like it was a
Exactly.
step up. And then digital reasoning was another stop along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, digital reasoning is really a pioneer in unstructured data, focused on the financial services world. I think the big money center banks of the world, like Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, BNP Paribas, looking for information in all unstructured data, conversations, emails, discussions that are recorded, to be able to look for nefarious actors, folks that were doing insider trading or skipping steps in the process of the appropriate financial disclosures and things of that nature. They also were very instrumental in combing the internet, looking for bad actors as it relates to criminals related to child abuses and things related to trafficking and the like with folks. And so it was very impactful from an ethical do good standpoint for the world. And so that foundation and being here in Nashville, Tennessee, led HCA to see and hear about our expertise in unstructured data. And we formed a partnership to create what is now Azra AI, which is a healthcare focused only business that used that kind of foundational understanding of unstructured data, which is really the holy grail of data science and machine learning and AI, and understand how to best process that, how to model it, and the like. And so we were able to use that legacy success of what digital reasoning did in the general market of unstructured data and conversational text, and use that specifically for solutions in healthcare.
Great. Well, I have to say that it sounds fairly logical and linear and the right kind of progression there. Not easy, but sometimes you look at these things and say, "What was all that? It didn't make any sense." But you have like a very, kind of a clear path. Maybe it looks more clear in retrospect than it did at the time. I don't know.
Exactly, always does.
Yeah. Good. Well, let's talk about Azra AI, and maybe let's start with just sort of the background on the problem. And as I understand, it's within
Mhm,
healthcare, but also oncology specifically, which is actually
mhm.
huge within healthcare. What are some of the
Sure.
unsolved issues in oncology care? Because there's a lot of you hear about,
Mhm,
there's all sorts of advances, new drugs,
mhm.
immunotherapy, people living longer, but what are the unsolved problems?
Some of the unsolved problems that we focus on relates to the unstructured data and just the massive amounts of data that we collect in the healthcare continuum. And oncology is probably at the top of that list if you think about the complex um, tests, images, reports that we have to do. And obviously, it's such an emotional and impactful area because of the life and death circumstances around it. And we're all so many of us are impacted by cancer. And so the problems are very straightforward in the sense of you have a tremendous amount of data. Most of it, over 80% of it, is unstructured, meaning someone has to read that sentence or that paragraph to understand what to do next. And many times that is a process that has to be repeated over and over down the workflow stream. And so one of the problems that we focus on in oncology is how do we augment and automate some of that process to let humans focus on what humans do best, let machines and automation serve that up to them, and then have an impact on outcomes, on patient engagement, on profitability, to be able to do that in an environment that is overworked, understaffed, very, very small margins, and really take that idea of automation and augmentation of human workflows can have a win-win-win, both clinical, operational, and financial. And so that problem is front and center on oncology as we grow older as a population, as we have more and more cancer diagnosis, as we have more and more people leaving the labor market in that field. Technology has to bridge the gap or we're going to have some significant issues. And that's really where we focus, is how can we bring technology, marry it up with workflows, and make that outcome, both from a process and a result, better.
Got it. During the pandemic, were these issues just still the same, or were there new things related to cancer that were an issue during the lockdowns and during the aftermath of that?
Two negative things occurred. Number one, we had a delay in screenings in cancer and appointments for where cancer may have been diagnosed earlier. And so that was a bubble that built up as people canceled their appointments and didn't go to appointments over that string of time. And so that's created a bubble that will now have to work itself through the system with potentially delayed and worse outcomes that need to be addressed even faster and faster than before. And the other negative criteria was folks just threw their hands up and said, I am burned out as a healthcare provider, as a clinician. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to retire. I'm going to go do something else. I am completely at my end of being able to deal with all the trauma that was thrown at them over that period of time. And so when you have a staffing problem on the bottom and more coming in on the top, it creates a exponential issue that we have to solve for. And COVID absolutely has had that residual effect of staffing, more patients needing treatment faster and sooner.
So, let's relate this issue about all the unstructured data, the staffing
Mm-hmm.
challenges, the pandemic, what the patients are going through, and all that. What would be an example of how this sort of confluence of issues would affect a given patient? Like, why would I care about it? Sort of like, yeah, it's all a hassle, but if I got a
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis, I have cancer, I'll be treated, I'll either
Mm-hmm.
be okay or I won't be okay. Does it end up actually affecting the
Mm-hmm.
patient?
Absolutely. If for no other reason, the time it takes to get through the process can be strained because of the workflow and the human resources component of it, of that. So if you think about whenever you're diagnosed with cancer, there's numerous people that are involved in that. There's the physician that refers you to go get a biopsy. There's the pathologist that reads the slide to see whether that was cancerous or not. It's the person that contacts you to give you that news. It's the person that then schedules your first consult or appointment to find out what do we do about your cancer. And then it's the team of people that will treat you, whether that's surgically or not, down the road to get you through your care pathway. All those interactions require humans to read and decipher and discern clinical information that is by and large unstructured, meaning all those different pathways have to be read. If you have a shortage of labor and you have normally, say, 5 cancer navigators on your staff or 3 nurses in the doctor's office and you're down to 1 or you're down to 3, then that time frame gets stretched out. And when someone would have been called on a Friday afternoon to be told about their diagnosis or make their first appointment with their surgical oncologist, that may slip to Monday. And then that then leads to a greater delay downstream and downstream. So the labor automation of being able to have someone come in and really focus on the idea of what are the needles and what is the hay, and the needle in the haystack analogy, the signal and the noise. And the really highly qualified and skilled clinicians, whether it's a nurse or SUMA certified tumor registrar or a physician, it's serving me up the ability to focus on you that was diagnosed with cancer and to prioritize your needs over the 8 people that came back with a benign reading from their lump or their spot or their lesion that needed to be reviewed. And so being able to prioritize and to be able to segment into who is at most risk, has the highest acuity level, starts to create great value in that process that will play out over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months.
Got it. So you have the, maybe two issues that are related, but a little bit different. One is just you've got
Mhm.
a bunch of people, you need to deal with them, but maybe you'd go in alphabetical order if you didn't have some way to say, okay, this is
Mhm.
the person that really needs to be notified on Friday. The other can wait until next week or whatever.
Right.
And I think there's some people that actually fall completely off the path. Like they may be some kind of an incidental finding. So if you're in and
Yes.
having a chest X-ray, but they see something on your liver that they may not have been looking for it. They might not have a process in place as well. So it's not just that maybe it is that
Mhm.
the data is unstructured and particularly there because they don't have a structure for where they would put a finding about the liver. But I mean, is that just something that people point out as like that's theoretical? It could happen, or are we actually seeing an incidental finding? You notice this, it could be something, and then you just miss it until it's too late because of the way the system is set up.
It is a huge problem and it happens every day. And it is something that involves everything from the idea of health equity to cost of healthcare to poor outcomes. To use your example, only about 30% of incidental findings, lung nodules, are followed up in the proper time frame. So think about that. That's a staggering number when you think about the progression of lung cancer, the poor survivability as you go through the stages of lung cancer. And so every day someone goes into an ER who has fallen and broken a rib on the curb from their biking accident. And then a chest x-ray or a CT scan is done, and they patch up their ribs and they send them home and they say, David, you had a 6 millimeter nodule on your right lung. Make sure to go get that followed up on as soon as possible, and have it checked out. If you are afraid of what that means and you don't want to get it looked at because you're scared, if you are worried about your financial position of how would I pay to go to another specialist and have this looked at, or if you're not clinically and healthcare literate at an extreme level or even an advanced level, you may not know what it means to have a tiny nodule of 6 millimeters on your lung. And so it is impossible. And as we were speaking a little earlier, to verify and guarantee that that person takes care of themselves the way they should and gets the proper follow up. They fall through the cracks. They aren't able to be tracked and identified. And from an AI technology standpoint, it's really the only way we can review every single one of those radiology reports created in the emergency room from that fall to see the ones that have the nodule and need to be followed up on. And so it's a trust me, hope the patient knows how serious this is, may or may not get a follow up call. And then that goes on to be something potentially much more serious.
I think even to compound that and to talk about it from someone like myself who is like advanced in healthcare knowledge for a non-clinician, I was struck by a
Mhm.
car a few years ago. I ended up in the emergency room. They did a full scans, but also, I had a brain injury from that as well. So I was just confused in general about anything. My wife was shocked because she doesn't expect me to go and get it, hit by a car, and there weren't any findings like that. But if there had been, even if sitting here, I could tell you, yep, I'm the type that follows up on everything. I know it. Even I probably wouldn't have because it was just overwhelming, and my brain wasn't working right at the time.
Right. And we see that happen every day. And even people, one of our clients recently called a patient back and said, did you have your incidental lung nodule followed up on? And she said, oh, yes, I got an appointment with such and so, and it's for 6 months. I
Yeah,
think it's in June or whatever the time frame is. And the navigator at our hospital said, no, 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 you need to come in next week. This
yeah.
is something that can't wait 6 months. And that's the type of thing that we shouldn't have to rely on the acumen of the patient to make sure they know what something is serious or not serious, or needs immediate attention or not.
Yeah. All right, good. So now I got this. So, digital reasoning, you go on, you've seen all this unstructured data from all over. You can do all sorts of stuff with it. Focus on healthcare with Azra. You've got this
Mm-hmm.
use case with oncology where it's life and death is at stake, plus a lot of money. Sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what kind of progress are you making? And also, no matter what you do in healthcare, whatever is a good idea, if it doesn't fit into the workflow, it's just one more thing that's not going to happen.
Right.
So, like, where are you actually getting to with the company beyond identifying the problem and bringing some technology to bear? What's actually occurring?
Absolutely. What we're doing is we're marrying the technology we've kind of talked about at a high level to that workflow. So enabling nurses and clinicians to say, you can eliminate certain steps and you can move people to steps that are much more important. For example, more patient interaction about how to treat your cancer, what obstacles you have to a potentially good outcome, as opposed to looking through EHR systems, scheduling systems, tracking and emails to see whether an appointment's been made or not been made, or whether something's been followed up on. So the biggest advance from the fundamental technology that we created is injecting that into that workflow to we eliminate those manual reads and those rereads of information that can be segmented and surfaced to the user. And so the secret sauce, if you will, is marrying the two things. I'm sure there's lots of great technology companies and lots of great workflow companies, but if you show them where the technology can be inserted in that kind of linear workflow, then you can compress it, make it more automated and streamlined. And we see really a huge impact right away, and it allows us to really be able to get the adoption and the endorsement of our clients, because all it takes is that first story of saying, oops, Mrs. Smith did not make her appointment. We did not know anything about her, because we would have had to read through 1,300 radiology scans to find this one patient. And yet we walk in and turn on your application and we see that that one patient is at the top of our list. And so once they see that impact of the patient, that is really priceless in the result. It's very straightforward to have them adopt and continue to inject that workflow. The other thing is, folks are very proud of their designation as a cancer center or as a
Yeah,
research center, and so the ability to get uh, them to buy in, and they do this very willingly, to say, I want all of my patients to come and get the level of care that they deserve from us, and whatever that hospital system may be. And so this assures that no one ends up going to Google to determine where their next care should be. They
right.
get informed, they get to make decisions, and they get to be in control. And our partners and our clients obviously think they are a great place to go. And so they're able to retain them in their system to get the best outcomes possible.
Got it. So you partly answered my next question, which is that within healthcare, a lot of times you can do the right thing, but it doesn't always mean you can make money. And in fact, if you do too much of the right thing, in some cases you could go out of business because it may mean turning patients away and
Right.
so on. But how does I think here in cancer care, just the sort of the health impact will overwhelm the financial one. Nonetheless, um, what's the business model from your standpoint? And does the structure of the healthcare system help or hurt the ability to get the adoption
Mm.
and for you to get paid for what you're doing as Azra?
It's very, very important, because, as you said, there's lots of great ideas in theory and practice, but they either aren't scalable or they cost too much or there's no way to implement them. The really wonderful thing about having both a clinical impact and an operational financial impact is a health system, and we have lots of data and peer-reviewed papers to prove this out, is that if a health system can contact you immediately after your diagnosis, meaning literally within hours of being told that pathology report was positive for a type of cancer, statistics say you will be far more likely to come to my system to have your treatment. And if you're in any kind of competitive market, any kind of a market that has choice with multiple locations, multiple systems, then what we do is we raise what we call the ability to retain patients, patient retention, or looked at it in reverse. We reduce the amount of out migration. I mean, you touched my hospital system either with that biopsy or that initial concern about a problem that potentially could be cancer, but you didn't come to me for the actual treatment, for the surgery, for the chemo, for the radiation afterwards. And that is a financial proposition, to your point. And so what we do is, because of that automation and giving the clinicians the ability to handle more patients, to spend more time with patients, our clients contact and are able to start to affect that patient's care literally hours after they're diagnosed, as opposed to someone else that may take 3 days, 4 days, or a week to contact them. And that drives up their patient retention, drives up their revenue by cancer type, and allows them to be able to be more financially stable and to offer more of these types of patient friendly and patient engagement type of services.
Got it. All right. Well, that is more straightforward than some of the value propositions. I mean, you could just imagine the perspective of the CEO of a healthcare system where there was a patient that had an incidental finding in one of their facilities. It wasn't tracked. They ended up 6 months later going somewhere else for care that could have been taken care of sooner and
Mhm.
at their own system. So I think if you've got a good reason on that one, as well as just sort of the quicker care,
Mhm.
getting somebody right in the door there makes good sense. I want
Absolutely.
I want to talk about how the company's financed. We were introduced by one of your
Mhm.
investors whom I know, but what's the financing, and what are the growth plans? How are you using that investment?
Yeah, we are lucky to have some really great partners. Sopris Capital, founded by Andrew Paul, who was really a pioneer at Welsh Carson in the healthcare investing sector as it was first being born years ago. And then FCA Ventures here in Nashville, which was really important to have a local commitment, as many folks look at Nashville as really a healthcare thought leadership and a headquarters, obviously with many health companies. And so it was great to have those two really intelligent and knowledgeable industry thought leaders over the past to be able to be our partners. And so we spun out the company in February of 22. We've been able to double our business in our first 10 months or 9 months or so of going out on our own. And we are on track to really kind of triple that in our first kind of full year in 2023. So we're super excited. We're really straightforwardly all about being a passionate pioneer, getting the word out about what we do, understanding that there is a better way to deal with challenges in the oncology and other service line workflows, and to give a lifeline to all these clinicians that are just really drowning in overburdened work and paperwork and data as that just continues to grow and grow and grow. And that will lead us into other areas as well: identification for clinical trials, cohort filling for people looking for research patients, the ability to automate and fill cancer registries and other service lines like cardiology and ortho and the like. And so we're super excited about our future, and we want to really stick to our ability to be experts in unstructured data. And we feel we can replicate that across many different workflows.
Great. So it sounds like it's been a busy, at least year or two, maybe more. Have you had a chance to read any good books? Anything that you would recommend to our listeners?
Well, I've just kicked off reading literally this week a new book that I'm excited to get through. It's called 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. And it really talks about how to build a company and what to look for to future-proof your company. So that's my latest book I'm reading and just getting started on it. So I'm looking forward to seeing if it's as good as I anticipate.
Well, there are a lot of business books out there, and I found that one a lot that are sort of similar, or they go in one direction or another. That one I did find some unique and differentiated insights. So I think you will enjoy it.
Good.
If you're at the 0 to, maybe you're at the 0.15 or whatever where you are in the book, but I think you'll find it is a good one. So I endorse that one as
Great.
well. Well, Chris Cashwell, CEO and founder of Azra AI, I want to thank you for joining me today on the HealthBiz podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, and it's a pleasure to join you and appreciate what you do for the healthcare community.
You've been listening to the HealthBiz podcast with me, David Williams, president of Health Business Group. I conduct in-depth interviews with leaders in healthcare business and policy. If you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite service. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe on your second and third favorite services as well. There's more good stuff to come, and you won't want to miss an episode. If your organization is seeking strategy consulting services in healthcare, check out our website, healthbusinessgroup.com.